The first time I heard her was in winter, during the long frost of 1842. It was late, well after the lamps had been extinguished, and the house was wrapped in that heavy stillness that comes only when the snow has buried the roads. I was alone in the servants' quarters, listening to the wood in the walls creak from the cold, when I heard it, 3 slow taps. Not on my door, but inside the wall behind my bed. I sat up, holding my breath. The sound didn't come again. By morning I'd convinced myself it was nothing, a mouse, perhaps. The house was old, after all, older than anyone who lived in it. The master, a widower, seldom left his study. His daughter was away with relatives. My duties were simple: keep the rooms tidy, light the fires, fetch water from the pump before it froze. Days passed without speech or company. But on the 4th night, as I blew out my candle, I heard it again. 3 taps. Then, faintly, the whisper of cloth against wood. I pressed my ear to the paneling. The wall was cold. I thought of the narrow spaces between beams, dark and tight, where dust lay thick and the air never moved. By the 7th night, I had learned her pattern. The taps came after the last log in the study fire had fallen to embers, after the clock in the hall had struck 2. Always from the same place, just behind my bed, low to the floor, as though someone were crouched there. Sometimes there was breathing, so soft I could barely tell if it was real. I told myself not to mention it. The master disliked interruptions, and there was nowhere else for me to sleep. Instead, I began leaving a slice of bread on the table before I retired, half jesting to myself that it might keep the thing, whatever it was, occupied. One morning, the bread was gone. That day, I examined the room more closely. The wallpaper, faded and peeling, hid the seams of the wood beneath. Near the floor, behind the bed, I found a faint line, a panel, small and square. My heart was loud in my ears as I traced it with my fingers. It was nailed shut. The next night, I woke to a new sound. Not tapping, humming. A woman's voice, low and tuneless, rising from within the wall. It went on for some minutes before fading. I lay awake until the grey light seeped through the curtains. From then on, she grew bolder. I would hear her shift her weight, drag her hand along the beams, even cough softly, as if clearing her throat. Once, in the stillness, I whispered, "Who's there?" The breathing stopped. And then, after a pause long enough to make me wish I had not spoken, came the faintest reply, "No one." The master grew thinner that winter. He complained of drafts, of food going missing from the pantry, of hearing footsteps on the upper floor when no one was there. I said nothing, though my eyes often wandered to the panel in my room. One night, the snow piled so high against the windows that I could no longer see the lamps along the lane. The wind screamed through the chimney. I thought perhaps she would be silent in such weather, but no. The tapping came earlier than usual. Closer. This time, I did not wait. I lit my candle and dragged the bed aside. The little square of wood seemed to shiver in the light. I pried at the edges with the handle of my brush until one nail came loose, then another. The panel gave way with a muffled sigh, and a breath of air rolled out, stale, damp, and carrying a smell I could not name. I lifted the candle and peered inside. The space was black, no more than 2 feet wide, but deep enough that my light could not touch the far end. Dust swirled in the warm air from my room. I saw the impression of knees in the grime. And then, movement. Something shifting just beyond the reach of the flame. Her face emerged slowly, pale as plaster, the eyes too wide, as if unused to the light. She blinked at me, then smiled, an awful, crooked smile, like a crack running through porcelain. Before I could move, she raised one finger to her lips. I must have dropped a candle, because the next thing I remember is darkness. The panel shut once more. But from that night onward, she no longer kept to her hours. I would feel her weight against the wall at any time, morning, dusk, deep in the night. I would hear her nails tracing patterns in the wood, or the slow pull of breath just inches from my ear. Sometimes, I still wonder how long she had been there before I arrived. Years, perhaps. Long enough to know the house better than its master. Long enough to watch every tenant sleep. By spring, the master fell ill. He took to his bed upstairs, and I was left to tend to him alone. The night he died, I heard her moving through the walls, her steps light and careful, following me from room to room. I locked my door, but I knew it would make no difference. When the relatives came to claim the house, I left without a word. I never told them about the panel, or the humming, or the pale face in the dark. Some things, I think, are better left in the walls.